Hello everyone. I'm Deepika Ghosh from Northern Arizona University where I am working as a postdoc and I love the awesome world of biochar. I have a PhD on biochar for mine restoration and currently I am working in Northern Arizona to apply biochar to the wildfire affected soil, and I'm also working with some of the farmers to see how biochar does in dry arid conditions. So, getting into my slides. So the title of my talk today is Modulating Wildfire Affected Soil in Northern Arizona by Biochar Application. And the study was done with my super cool supervisor, whose name is Hansu Pahan, is a professor in the Northern Arizona University. And yeah, we are working a lot on, bringing the science of biochar to that region where there is no talks about biochar. So my presentation topic includes the study that we did with charbos, the same charbos that you see there, and how it did with maybe the biochar production, the heating rate, and stuff like that. And I'll talk about some of the preliminary data of how it's doing in the wildfire affected soil, the semi-arid agricultural soils, and some other challenges and opportunities that are associated with them. Best part about talking in a biochar conference, I don't need to tell people what biochar is, so I'll just skip this. So I'll just talk about the biomass bottleneck. So talking a bit about Northern Arizona is a very is a place which is very dry in nature. It hardly gets any rain, but when it gets, it's in a large amount, and it has snow during the winter, so it's not very good condition for plant growth. And the biomass load that we have, because Flagstaff has the world's largest ponderosa pine forest. So what do we do with all the biomass? Because the biomass doesn't decompose, and it's often just open pile and burned. And the fire season is crazy in Flagstaff. We get a lot of wildfire. So what should we do with the biomass? So why not convert it into biochar? So that's a Charbos machine. It's from a demo from 2023 that we did, and it's published. So if you want to read the details of the study, it's there. So what we did is we used the Charbos machine to produce biochar out of some dead snags that we had and some green biomass out of the forest clearing. We also studied how the diameter of the wood itself would affect the biochar properties. For example, will it affect the burning rate? What will be the end product or the biochar yield associated with it? So what we found was the burning rate was highest for small diameter trees, of course, because smaller diameter. And yeah, and also for green biomass because the moisture content was higher. So, we were just able to get rid of the biomass quickly because of the moisture included. When we talk about the biochar yield, the highest yield we obtained was in the biomass, which is a good thing because when we are actually working in the field conditions, we don't have time to segregate the biomass based on sizes. So it's good that we got the yield highest in a biomass section. So we also did this sensitivity analysis where we studied how the rate of burning and the cost of burning, and by estimating the cost of biochar, how the cost will be determined. For example, if the burning rate is higher, the volume of the biomass burned down there is higher, so the cost of burning will be less because in that fixed time we are able to burn more biomass, and time is money, and we are able to produce more biochar which could be sold and revenue can be generated. So in this particular study, the volume of biomass that we burn was like 0.8 green ton per hour. So if we did the calculation of, if the cost is 750 or 1,000 or 1,500, what the cost might be. So this is a SEM figure of the biochar, how it looks under the microscope, and it's like a sponge web. Like you can see that it can hold a lot of moisture, and it has pores which allows the microbial activities to happen and provides a surface where the exchange of nutrients can also happen. These are some of the atomic, the EDAX done of the biochar that we have. It's like, of course, high in carbon and some of the oxygen elements. So this is the FTIR of the biochar that we have, which shows the surface functional groups. So we talk a lot about that biochar is recalcitrant in nature. It can fix carbon in the soil for a long period of time. So actually this is the region. So this is the region in the graph which shows that it's really aromatic in nature, and it has those fixed carbons which can help fix the carbon in the soil for like hundreds of years that we often talk about. So with the northern Arizona context, I'll talk about three stuff. The wildland forest, like I said, it has a lot of forests which often leads to burn scars and are devoid of organics and nutrients in the soil. So rejuvenating the soil is a big concern in that region. Secondly, because it's so dry and arid, agriculture is really difficult. So can we apply an amendment which can help with agriculture? And three, why biochar? Because of course we have that much of biomass, and why not convert it into biochar in the field itself in place of hauling the biomass, and Arizona doesn't have any market. So why not do something in the field which can help the soil? So this is a study that we conducted in a private property right next to the national forest, which was totally, completely destroyed by fire. It was the pipeline fire, and nothing was left. The soil had like burn scars. And so we applied biochar at 2 application rates and planted the ponderosa saplings to see how it's doing in the soil. Also, we did a time study of how much time is it taking to apply biochar versus, not apply biochar and just putting a sapling in the soil. So it's like 3 times. So the question was it worth, putting the time 3 times rather than just planting it? Was it worth it? Was the soil actually being, affected by biochar application? So what we found was, this is the heat map for the carbon in the soil. So by the end of the experiment, at biochar application 20 ton per hectare, the total carbon in the soil was really high. And biochar has 2 fractions of carbon, recalcitrant carbon and labile carbon. The recalcitrant carbon is responsible for fixing carbon in the soil, and the labile carbon is like food for microbes. So out of this total carbon, which means 60% of that carbon will remain in the soil for like hundreds of years, which is a very win-win situation, right? Because we are able to fix carbon in the soil. I also looked at the nutrient profile in the soil by biochar application. Some of the nutrients really improved. For example, potassium here, which you might know is very good for the soil, and some of the other nutrients out there. I won't get into the details of the nutrients. I'll talk about the biochar in agricultural soil. So as you can see in those 2 pictures, those are some of the strawberry plantations. So the one up there is without biochar, and the one down there is with biochar. Like, it's so evident, like the one with biochar is doing so much more better than the one with biochar. So we kind of worked with growers around Flagstaff who are growing leafy greens, tomatoes, chilies, and we applied biochar in collaboration with them to see how it's doing in their farms. So the very notable, result that I got was for the field water content. The water content in the Forestdale farm seems to increase a lot. Also, the farmers were really happy with the application. So in Camp Verde, Sedona, I'll talk about Sedona. Sedona is like very hot and dry. And during the temperature of 110 and dry conditions, they said their chili plants were able to sustain without water for 3 or 4 days, which is a big victory. In Forestdale farms, the leafy greens seem to be bigger. In the Ida Rose farms, the tomato plantations were doing really great. So yeah, the farmers were happy, which means like farmers knows the best more than me. I am not a trained, agriculturist or anyone, but farmers knows the best. So in nutshell, that's what we are trying to do. We are using the waste biomass to produce biochar in the Charboss or any other machine that's available, apply it in the soil and see how it's helping with soil which is maybe degraded, dry, or needs any sort of help. The challenges that are associated with the biochar application is the cost of production currently, because things are not very standardized, and the companies that are available sometimes can be expensive, and even bringing machines in forest can get expensive, because it's not, if you understand the supply and demand chain, because the supply is less right now, so demand is less, that's why the costs are higher. We also have limited, infrastructures. We only have one biochar production unit in Arizona, Southwest Biochar. Is there, Randall? So yeah, so we don't have any biochar market, and they are struggling. We know that for a fact. So we are trying to promote that so that people come to know about biochar, and we kind of keep their ball rolling. Need for farmers and land managers to be aware. I attended this talk where they did a survey, and it seems very less people are applying biochar in the soil right now. So there needs to be awareness a lot, and of course the standardization and the regulatory policy. That's an ongoing thing. That's what I know right now. So what could be our next step? So we really want to integrate, biochar in the forest restoration value chain, and also, upscale the application rate that we are doing right now, because currently it's like a plot scale experiments that we are doing, but we really want to apply it at larger scale to see, how it would do. We also want to outreach to more agricultural communities so that, the word is out and people accept biochar more, and of course the policy support. So yeah, that's all I have to say, and these are our partners, and I also have a call for paper. If anyone wants to, submit a manuscript, please scan the QR code.